Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today we will be solving an AWS DevOps interview question wherein we are asked to create an IAM role to access an S3 bucket from an EC2 instance via the Terraform code. In this task of the interview, we would have to create the S3 bucket from scratch, the EC2 instance from scratch, and also the IAM role and the IAM instance profile from scratch. Also, we are not to provide S3 full access to the IAM role. So let's quickly get started on how we could achieve this feat. So let's get into the video. I would first be going into the directory where I would be saving the code. So as you see, I'm currently inside a empty directory wherein I don't have any files or folders currently as of now. The first thing that I would be doing under Terraform is I would be providing a provider.tf, and the content for the provider.tf would be coming from our Terraform documentation. So I am looking for the code that would create the Terraform bucket for us. So I don't want to use the module, but I would be actually going ahead and using the resource that is AWS S3 underscore Terraform, and this is the provider.tf that we could use. So the first thing that we do is actually provide the provider configuration, and I would also configure the region. The region in which I am going to create stuff is in Hyderabad, that is AP South 2. So I could go into the region, and this is the Hyderabad region wherein I would be using my credentials to create the stuff. So S3 would also actually be created in the same region. So what I do is create the S3 bucket using this. You could keep the credentials or you could forgo the credentials. It's totally up to you. What I'll be doing is I'll be giving a proper naming convention to this, that is S3 underscore bucket, and I'll probably give a similar naming convention, that is CPB00 S3 bucket, and the name would be exactly the same that I give to the bucket, so that we have a commonality, and the environment is a demo environment. So this is the S3 bucket. So this code would actually be creating the S3 bucket for us. The next thing that I would be doing is creating the IAM role for our EC2 instances. So I would go for IAM, and the first thing that I would be creating is an IAM role. If you see, this is the IAM role details. So I'll just copy the stuff and go in, put it inside my IAM.tf. The first thing that I do is change the role to CPB00. This is IAM underscore S3 underscore access. For I would say it as EC2, and the name of the role would be CPB00 S3 ACC access, S3 access. Okay. As you see, it by default is giving us the policy statement wherein we are actually trusting the EC2 instances in this to be assuming the role for us. So I'll just give this. The tag name can be exactly the same, or you could omit the tag name. I currently would be omitting the tag name and would be doing this. Now that the IAM role is created, the next thing that we have to focus on creating is the policy document itself. So as for the policy, so we would be creating an IAM role policy, and then we would be attaching this policy with this IAM documentation. So let's quickly look at it. So here we have the role ID. So that means as we create the IAM role policy, it would actually be attached to the IAM role itself. So what I'll do is quickly copy paste it, and here what I'll say is cpb00 s3 access, and this is s3 access. I will call it as limited because I am not giving all access on this. So I'll just do this, and this is the ID that I would be providing. Now if you see for the actions part, right, so we actually don't have much. So what I'll do is we need to change from EC2 to S3, and I'll call it as list all buckets. So this is one of the S3 policies that we have. I guess it's list all my S3 buckets. So if in case you're not 100% sure of what exactly the IAM role should be, I would always suggest you to go into IAM and create a sample role. So what I'll do is I'll go into policy and go ahead and check for this create policy document from here, and what I would be doing is would be going with the S3 bucket. First, what I'll be doing is list all my buckets. This is the number one policy that we would be doing. I would be adding more permissions, and what I'll be doing is selecting S3, and the permissions that I would be doing is list bucket to read, that is get objects, so that it can download objects. I'd also put a write object or the put object stuff. We would not be giving any delete object permissions because that has not been specifically mentioned over here. Now if you see, we also don't have the S3 buckets as of now. So what I'll do is currently just say this, and I'll click on next, and I'll give a name to this policy. This is demo policy S3 access, and what I can do is create a policy. Now that the policy has been created, because our agenda is not to create the policy from the GUI but create it from the Terraform code itself. So what we would be doing is taking in all the permissions. So this is list all my S3, list all my buckets. So I would be actually putting this over here. This is list all my buckets. So that's number one. So we have to provide the policy definition that allows us to do everything with this. Now the next policy that we would be doing is an action. And we are actually going to provide the list bucket, the put object, and the get object in a similar situation. So this is what it looks like in the actions. We call it as, we open the square brackets and then we enter this, and so it is S3 colon list bucket. This is the first action. Then the next action would be S3 get object. The next action is S3 put object. Object. The next thing that we would be defining is the effect, and the effect is allow. And the next thing that we need to define is the resource. Now as you know, we don't have the resources yet, and we actually would be having two resources to be defined with this. The first resource is nothing but the S3 bucket name itself. Now because we already know what the bucket name would be, so what we would be doing is providing the S3 ARN, which is ARN for the S3 bucket. And then what we would be doing is, so we'll try to get the S3 bucket name, which is this. So this is the bucket name, and I will actually paste this over here. So what I would be doing is doing this. This is the S3 ARN. I'll copy everything as it is, and for the list object and the other stuff to work, we should also be giving a /start to the entire thing. Now if you're wondering if what is the best way of putting in the stuff. So you could always go over here and you could look at any of the S3 ARN. So you could go to the property, and this is the ARN that you would have. So we are actually having a very good ARN, so this is good, and this should also be working. If you have to be specific, so the list bucket actually needs this resource ID, and the get object and the put object actually needs this resource ID to be working. If you only provide this resource ID, so you would not be able to get and put objects, because it would not work for anything which is inside the S3 bucket. So if you want that to be done, you would actually need this to be added. Now these are the things, so let's quickly look at the documentation, what exactly this says. So we have the IAM policy and the role has been created. The next thing that we have to create is an EC2 instance. So I'll go to the EC2 instance. So you actually don't see anything but an EC2 host, but this is a dedicated host to be allocated, so we are not interested in dedicated host. So but what I'll do is AWS underscore instances is the thing that should actually work for us. So provides EC2 instance resources. So this is something that we would be creating, and I would be replicating all of this into the stuff. Now if you already have an AMI ID that has to go with this, it's a great stuff. Or else you could also use the data block to actually get the AMI details. Also use a data block so that you could tell the interviewers that you are able to create this. So what I'll do is I'll try to copy this AMI block, that is the data block, and let's change it with an Amazon Linux AMI for our convenience. So what I would be doing is I will be going into the EC2 section, that is in AP South 2. I would be going into the launch template or the launch instance stuff, and here if you select Amazon Linux, so you would actually be getting the AMI ID. Now if you copy this AMI ID, you should be good, but if you would like to use the data resource to actually get the AMI details, you would have to search for the AMI in the public IDs, and this is the AMI name that has to be searched. Now in the application code, so what you would be doing is change this from Ubuntu to Amazon Linux. The virtualization will still be HVM, and the other thing that you would have to do is change the owner details. So once the owner details is changed, you could actually save this over here, and this is the CPB00 AMI details. So I'll just save this, and what I'll do is copy this and replace Ubuntu with the AMI details. So T3 micro is something that we should be okay with. Now this EC2 instance would also need many other things like the subnets in which it is going to be created and the key pair name. That is something which is very much needed. So let's actually look at the key pair, where exactly the key pair is. So I have the key name, so I'll copy this and I'll put it over here. So this is the key name. I would select any of the keys that is already available in my system. So what I'll do is go into the key pairs that are already there in the Hyderabad region, and I would be selecting an existing key pair, that is CPB00 AP South 2. Already have this. The next thing that I would be adding into is the subnet in which I would like to launch the EC2 instances. So what I would say is the subnet ID, and that this is optional, but I would prefer to launch it in a particular subnet. Now to get the subnets, you could either do it manually or hard coded. Because the ask from the interviewer is not to get all the resources, so what I'll do is I'll just copy one of the subnet IDs from the existing stuff, and we would actually be putting the subnet ID over here. The next thing that we might need is security groups. If you already have a security group which is allowing SSH access, that's really great in your stuff. Or what you could do is actually create a security group along with this. Now optional EC2 and default VPC only. So this security groups option, right, that you see over here, right, this has to be used only if you are on a default VPC. So what I'll do is I'll also add the security groups option over here and have this added over here. Now let's quickly look at the security groups and see if we already have any security group in this region which is actually allowing SSH access. So this is launch wizard 1, and this security group is actually allowing the access. So what I'll do is I'll select this and I'll put it over here. This should be done. The last thing that I'll change is the name of the server, so that is EC2 Linux, and we'll paste it this. So now what I'll do is, if you see, I'm currently inside the directory which already has the S3 details, the IAM and the EC2 instance details. Now the other thing that we have missed is the IAM role, which has to be assigned to the EC2 instance. So we would have to check for the instance profiles that has to be created. So we'll quickly go ahead and look at that. So I'll just check for IAM if it is supporting any IAM details over here. As you see, nothing yet with the profile. So I'll do a Control F for profile and see if so here we have an IAM instance profile. And now if I copy this, I can paste this into my settings, and I could actually give the IAM instance profile details. But if you remember, we actually have only created an IAM role and an IAM role policy. We have not actually created an instance profile as yet. What I would be doing now is going into the documentation, and here I would say instance underscore profile, and see if there is anything which says IAM instance profile. This has to be created. Unless this is created, we would not be able to attach it with any of our EC2 instances. So this is something which should have been automated but is not automated. So cpb00 instance underscore profile is what I would be using. The name of the profile would be cp underscore cp hyphen b00 instance profile, and the IAM role to which I want to assign it is this one. So what I would be doing is I'll be putting it with this, and what we would be now doing is actually taking in this EC2 instance profile and adding it over here. So this would be AWS underscore IAM underscore profile dot I think it would be a name, but we never know. I think that should be a name that would be going in, but if we do face an error, we would definitely like to troubleshoot that. The next thing that I would do is do a Terraform init. So this would actually initialize the Terraform on the directory and would download all the necessary documents on the binaries that are needed. I would directly do a Terraform apply, and if there are any errors, we definitely get that over here. If you see here, it says security groups, and this is actually pointing me to an error, and it says that we actually need a set of strings to be done. Now this would be very clever if you could encounter errors and then fix it on the fly. So that would be really great in an interview. And if you just replace this with this, I believe that we should be able to circumvent the error. Now if you see, we are getting this invalid region as AP South 2. So it says that the region is invalid, which is not that should happen. So let's quickly look what it should be. It's Hyderabad region should be AP South 2 OUTH2 provider blah 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 blah. So let's do an AWS configure and see if yeah, it is AP South 2 configured on my system. So I'll not change anything as such. I'll go into the provider.tf and quickly see if AP South 2 is accepted or not. If not, then we would have to change certain stuff, but let's actually do a Terraform apply and see if this works. Now because AP South 2 is a fairly new region, right? So this could be possible that the region is still not supported over there in the Terraform world. So what you could do is as a fallback, maybe change this position to AP South 1 and see if that works. Now AP South 1 has been the Mumbai region, right? Now the problem with AP South 1 is you would have to change few stuff along the way. The first thing that we have hard coded is the subnet, so you would actually have to go into the AP South 1 region and try to get the subnet details. So that's the subnet over here. And if you look at the subnet, so that is I'll select one of the public subnets over here. So I'll select the existing subnet, that is this. Or the problem is this is not a default VPC that we are using, so this is a custom VPC, so most of our networks would not work. So what I'll do is create a custom default VPC for us. I'll copy the VPC ID, and in subnets, if I just paste the VPC ID, we would only get the public, we'll only get the subnets which are associated with that EC2 instance or that VPC. I'll quickly change this to this. The other thing that I should be able to change is the security group itself. So let's quickly go into security groups, and you would see that I already have some security groups, but if you filter out that VPC again, which is this, you would see that there is only one security group that is being allowed. Now if you are interested in creating a security group, you could always go back to IAM and you could see AWS security group, and you could create a security group from here. Right, so I'll quickly copy this post wherein we would be creating a security group for our EC2 instances. So what I'll do is I'll maybe create a new file for security group.tf, and we'll say cp v00, this is SSH, this is SSH allow, and I'll just keep it this. The thing that we would be doing is cpb00 because there is no VPC. So what I'll do is I'll hardcode the VPC ID. So what I'll do is go to VPC, this is the Mumbai region, and let's copy the VPC ID and look for this. The first thing that I would like to test is the Terraform apply still throwing me errors, or is it something that's this is I guess a good thing, right? Because this is actually not giving us the initialization error, but actually giving us the IPv6 error. So what I'll do is I'll change this. The CIDR that I want to allow for this demo is this. I want to allow port number 22, which is for SSH. I'll do this. I'll change the tag. Instead of TLS, I'll say SSH save, and let's try to do a Terraform apply and see if it works. This is pretty much good, right? The only problem is results trying. So basically this says that it's not able to find the AMI, and the reason because is the AMI name and stuff might change. So let's quickly go back to the EC2 instance and the data block where the AMI is created. The AMI should be the same, but let's quickly give another look and see if we are able to get the AMI or not. So what I'll do is I'll go into EC2, which is over here, and then what I'll do is go into instances, AMIs, and this is Hyderabad, and yes, I'm able to find the AMI. Now, is the owner the same? Yes, the owner is same. Okay, most recent is this, which is good. The key name is something obviously that has to change, so let's quickly go to the key pairs and see what exactly keys we have. Okay, sorry, I need to be in the Mumbai region, so that's the problem. So let's go back. I'll use CPB00 as the key, so I'll just change the key name to CPB00. Just saved. I'll go back to AMIs and search for that AMI again and see if we are able to find that AMI or not. It's not owned by me, but it should be owned by someone else. The account ID looks to be different, so what I'll do is change the account ID, and this should now be working. So the security group obviously has to change, so what I'll do is we'll change the security group details. So what I'll be doing is so we would be replacing this with this .id and see if this works. I am doubtful that this would work, but let's actually see if it actually gives us any errors. If you do a Terraform apply again, so this time it says it wants to create something, and let's actually see if it does that or not. So if you see, it's not actually able to give us the security groups because the security groups should be in double inverted commas. Now if you would like to give it in double inverted commas, so you should follow it up with the AWS, so you should follow it up with a few stuff, which would be your AWS underscore security group dot that is CPB00LRSSH dot the ID, and let's see if this actually works. If you do a Terraform apply now, and stuff is happening, which is good. It says it's gonna create two things. I don't know what it's destroying as of now. So let's actually see if in the plan it is taking in the security group or not. So the subnet and the security groups, it says it would be known after applying, which is not great, but destroying this, destroying that, error updating the security group, this error authorizing security group ingress rule invalid. Oh, did I do a typo in the security groups? Yes, so it has to be 22 and 22 and not just 22 and 2, so that's a strict no in terms of AWS. You can't, the from should always be lesser than the 2. That's the reason why probably that didn't work as expected. But if you see, we should now be able to create the EC2 instance, and if I go into the EC2 section or the instances section over here, you see that there is one EC2 instance which is already there, up and running. Let's go into this. So this is the EC2 instance, this is the public IP. I go into the directory where I have my keys, and I'll do an SSH EC2-user at the this hyphen I, that should be CPB00, so you could get that information from here. CP-B00.pem, and let's see if we are able to connect or not. So yeah, if you see that we have been able to connect, and if I do an AWS S3 LS, I should be able to get a list of all the S3 buckets. And if you see, we also have the S3 bucket, which is this. I could actually create a file called as file.txt, and let's fix the extension. I could echo some random text into this, into this file, and what we can do is using AWS S3 CP command actually upload this file into the S3 bucket. And you would see that we should not be getting any error, but you should be able to do the upload because you have the needed permissions for doing that. I'll go into the S3 and I could get the S3 buckets list, that is cpp00s3, and if you look at the file.txt, you actually are able to see the random text. Now what if I upload a file from my personal laptop and try to access this from the server? So I'll actually upload an index.html and I'll put it over there. And what we could do is to check if there is any files inside the bucket. So what I can do is do this. You would see that there should be two files now, a file.txt and index.html. If you want to download this file particularly inside the location, so what I'll do is first give the from address, that is this, and we would put this inside this location. Now if you see, this is giving us an error because the command that we should be using is not ls but cp. Today in AWS S3 cp, you see that we have now been able to download the file, right? So this is the file that we have. This is a very small version of the website that I host, but over and all we have the file. So this is how by using the Terraform code with all of these 4 files, you could actually create an S3 bucket to start with. Once the S3 bucket is created, you could create the IAM role, the IAM policy, which is actually going to give you the options, and you then have to create an IAM instance profile, because that is what is actually attached to the EC2 instance. Once that is completed, what you could do is create a security group and then allow that security group into your EC2, and that should be done. What I'll do is I close the terminal over here, and what I'll do is, before the video ends, also destroy the architecture that we just created, and I would approve that, and which should actually save you all the cost that is needed. Now this is in typical interview questions that are being asked on a regular basis in most of the jobs that are being offered in the market right now, and this is one way in which the interviewers can understand how good you are at reading documentations, how good you are at scripting or coding, and how good you are with troubleshooting and finding alternate solutions. So if you see, it is actually not able to delete the S3 bucket. Now that is because my S3 bucket is not empty. So the first thing that you should now also be doing is go back to buckets and probably select the bucket and say empty. You could clearly say permanently delete, and that should actually delete the S3 bucket for you. So this is now going to empty the S3 bucket, and once the bucket is empty, which is this, if you run the destroy again, this time only the S3 bucket which is left to be destroyed would be destroyed, and all the resources that were created by Terraform would be gone. I would be uploading this code to GitHub and would be mentioning the URL in the description below. That's it for this video. Thank you. Keep having a great day.